In a development that has stunned both domestic audiences in the United Kingdom and political observers across the globe, King Charles III was reported to have publicly expressed support for London Mayor Sadiq Khan's unexpected backing of former US President Donald Trump's thunderous address at the United Nations General Assembly. The move, described by seasoned commentators as one of the most unconventional alignments in modern diplomatic history, sent shockwaves rippling through Westminster, Washington, and the international community. According to palace insiders and government officials briefed on the matter, the king privately voiced his astonishment at the boldness of Sadiq Khan's decision, describing it as a rare act of political courage, before later allowing carefully worded remarks of support to circulate through close advisors. For many, the sight of the monarch seemingly standing shoulder to shoulder with the Labour mayor of London, a man often viewed as a fierce critic of Trump during his presidency, was almost unthinkable. Yet the unusual convergence came at a moment when Trump's fiery UN speech, centered on themes of sovereignty, national resilience, and the fight against global instability, was already dominating headlines worldwide. Trump's address, delivered with characteristic bravado and accompanied by thunderous applause from some delegates and stony silence from others, sought to position the United States once again as the indispensable power capable of leading through strength. What startled observers most was not just the content of the speech, peppered with references to Western civilization's survival and the right of nations to defend their cultural identity, but the unlikely coalition of voices in Europe, particularly from London, that chose to echo Trump's words rather than dismiss them. The reaction to this unprecedented alignment was immediate and intense, both within Britain and abroad. In Westminster, MPs across the political spectrum scrambled to make sense of what had transpired, with some conservative backbenchers praising King Charles for what they interpreted as a patriotic endorsement of a message that emphasized national strength and sovereignty. Labour frontbenchers, meanwhile, found themselves caught off guard by Sadiq Khan's dramatic pivot, as many had expected the London mayor to continue his historically combative stance against Donald Trump. During Trump's presidency, Khan had been one of the most outspoken critics of his policies on immigration, climate change, and multiculturalism, yet here he was, aligning himself, however cautiously, with the former US president's powerful rhetoric on global order. This sudden reversal was not lost on political analysts, who pointed to shifting geopolitical realities as a possible explanation. With Europe struggling under the weight of energy crises, mass migration, and rising authoritarian threats, some suggested that Khan's support for Trump's speech was less about personal endorsement and more about acknowledging that Western capitals, including London, could no longer ignore the raw appeal of muscular nationalism in an era of instability. Across the Atlantic, the reaction was equally electrifying. In Washington, Trump's allies seized upon the comments from both King Charles and Sadiq Khan as evidence that the former president's worldview had not only survived the turbulence of his White House years but was now being vindicated on the world stage. Conservative media outlets in the United States splashed banner headlines such as "King Charles and Khan back Trump at UN" and "Global Shift Toward Strength." Pundits debated whether this surprising alliance might indicate a broader realignment in Western politics, where traditional divides between left and right were giving way to a new consensus built around sovereignty, cultural preservation, and the reassertion of national pride. Yet the move also provoked sharp criticism. American liberals expressed dismay that two influential figures in Britain, one a constitutional monarch expected to remain politically neutral, the other a progressive mayor long considered an ideological opponent of Trump, would lend credibility to a figure they accused of undermining democracy and dividing nations. Social media erupted into a frenzy of memes, hashtags, and polarized debates, with hashtag #KingBacksTrump trending in the UK and hashtag #ConShocksLiberals gaining traction in the US. The diplomatic consequences of King Charles and Sadiq Khan's alignment with Donald Trump's UN speech quickly began to ripple across the international stage, triggering both strategic recalculations and ideological debates. In Brussels, European Union officials were said to be deeply unsettled by the spectacle of the British monarch appearing to endorse themes of sovereignty and national identity that had long been associated with Eurosceptic movements. For European leaders still nursing the wounds of Brexit, the King's remarks were seen as a symbolic reminder that Britain's post-EU trajectory remained deeply entangled with populist and nationalist currents. German Chancellor Annalena Baerbock issued a carefully worded statement emphasizing the importance of unity, collective decision-making, and shared values, a thinly veiled rebuke to Trump's muscular nationalism. In Paris, President Emmanuel Macron reportedly expressed private frustration, lamenting to aides that the United Kingdom continues to flirt with dangerous populism, even at the highest levels of its institutions. Meanwhile, in Ankara and Budapest, where strongman politics hold sway, leaders were quick to praise the king and Khan for what they described as a courageous recognition of global reality. The United Nations itself became the epicenter of the fallout, as Trump's address, already a flashpoint, was now supercharged by the unexpected endorsements from across the Atlantic. Delegates who had been skeptical of Trump's speech were forced to recalibrate their talking points, knowing that the combined weight of the British monarchy and a high-profile progressive mayor lent it new legitimacy. In the General Assembly's hallways, whispers spread among diplomats. Was this a signal that Western elites were preparing for a more hardline posture in global affairs? Could the ideological battles of the past decade between liberal internationalism and nationalist sovereignty be tipping toward the latter? In capitals as diverse as New Delhi, Riyadh, and Tokyo, editorial boards dissected the significance of the moment. Indian newspapers suggested that King Charles's support reflected a pragmatic acknowledgement of shifting global power balances, while Saudi commentators framed the event as proof that Western civilization is finally recognizing its vulnerabilities. Japanese analysts, on the other hand, warned of instability, cautioning that aligning with Trump's worldview may embolden revisionist powers to test the limits of global order. Back in London, the debate raged on with renewed ferocity. Parliamentarians questioned the propriety of a constitutional monarch inserting himself into what appeared to be a highly charged political moment, even indirectly. The palace issued clarifications, stressing that the king's remarks had been taken out of context and that His Majesty remained committed to impartial service. But the damage had been done. The image of Charles lending even tacit support to Trump's fiery rhetoric was already etched in the public imagination. Sadiq Khan, meanwhile, doubled down, delivering a press conference on the steps of City Hall where he reiterated his backing for any global message that calls for unity, resilience, and the defense of our democratic societies against destabilizing forces. While he carefully avoided personal praise of Trump, Khan insisted that, in moments of crisis, leaders must rise above past differences and support what strengthens our collective security. His words were met with applause from supporters and sharp condemnation from critics, many of whom accused him of hypocrisy given his years of outspoken opposition to Trump. As the days turned into weeks, it became clear that this was no fleeting scandal but a watershed in the narrative of 21st-century politics. Commentators increasingly described the alignment of King Charles, Sadiq Khan, and Donald Trump as a moment that blurred ideological boundaries and accelerated the shift toward a new political order. The old lines between left and right, liberal and conservative, monarchist and republican, seemed less relevant in a world grappling with climate emergencies, mass migration, cyber warfare, and the resurgence of authoritarian regimes. Instead, the emerging divide was between those who believed in muscular sovereignty and cultural resilience, and those who continued to champion globalist cooperation and liberal ideals. For King Charles, the episode may forever be remembered as the moment when his reign crossed from symbolic stewardship into the messy realities of geopolitics. For Sadiq Khan, it marked a transformation from Trump's outspoken adversary to a politician willing to transcend old enmities in the name of pragmatism. And for Donald Trump, it was a reminder to the world, and perhaps to himself, that his influence remained not only alive but resurgent, capable of commanding the attention of kings and mayors alike.